He looks to give his thoughts to issues in the news. Honorable Obun, good morning to you. Beg your pardon, I hear that you've left the capital city and now you're in Obanliko.
Oh, yes.
Uh,
Good morning, everybody. On a sad and happy note, we are here for the burial of the former Senate President, Right Honorable Dr. Joseph Wires. And the interment and the vigil takes place today for interment tomorrow in this hilly country of Obanliko local government.
Yeah, we've been following the valedictory session held at the National Assembly yesterday, and we also did follow the entourage of the Senate President upon his arrival there. We're with you in spirit at the moment as we continue to extend our condolences to the family of the late President of the Senate. Now, in keeping with one of the stories making rounds this morning, it's following President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 3-day state visit to France. This morning, a majority of the papers look at it from the angle of the FDIs and the president's woo to French investors. He says the economy has been repositioned and is looking to attract more investments. But the controversy here is coming at a time when popular Nigerian musician David Adeleke was tagged to be demarketing the country. And the president in his speech yesterday looked to have been, in a lighter way, responding to the interview granted by the musician and setting the record straight. Now, it's on the reaction from Nigerians to the perspective from Mr. President and the musician who should be an ambassador of the country. What do you make of this development?
Well, it's part of the wrong-headed nature of our people who politicize everything about their country. In spite and despite what you find elsewhere, you won't see a person of that level, of that exposure, who was nurtured by Nigeria, grew up in Nigeria, then gets international limelight and feels that the only way in which it can be accepted internationally is to demarket his own country. That is the highest form of irresponsibility. It is rascality taken too far. And I think that every Nigerian who is a Nigerian must definitely condemn that kind of behavior. Because in the first place, he's not even politically exposed as to say he's politicking. Yes, his uncle may be the governor of the state, but it doesn't qualify him to step out of Nigeria and demarket Nigeria. If Nigeria is so bad and you are living in Nigeria, just because you went out, does a butterfly become a bird because it has wings, it flies? These are some of the things that seeking international relevance can bring to young people who are badly managed. Because if he has a manager, you should know that by the mere fact that he's a Nigerian, he becomes an ambassador. And that his conduct is winning international awards. Was he winning them from New York? Was he from Washington? Was he from London? Was he from Frankfurt? So why is he thinking that he's already an international figure and therefore will not need Nigeria anymore? And yet he comes to Nigeria and sits in Nigeria and benefits from everything that Nigeria can afford. And he's investing in Nigeria. It's Nigeria that made him rich. He didn't get rich by going to America. Nigeria made him what he is. Because why has he invested in Nigeria? What is his investment in Nigeria? In spite of what he has gotten from Nigeria. People who benefit so much from this country should learn to be less vocal about the challenges of Nigeria like every other place. If every American keeps saying because of Trump, he will stay in America again, will he go there? Today, Trump caused America enough crisis, enough embarrassment, yet he's still president and elected. And it is the same America he sees to now start mouthing about how Nigeria is not good for investment. And you can see, so Macron, with all his intelligence, the intelligence he has about Nigeria, did not know the relevance of a Nigerian president at this time to invite. Tinubu did not go to France. He was invited to France by the president of France. So Davido is better than the French president. Is France one of the third world countries? So I think we should be more circumspect about such people and begin to think about, begin to wonder about their pedigree, about their personality, about their intellect, and about the content of this kind of persons rather than take them very seriously.
Honorable Obun, let's not digress too much. Quite very strong points you've made there, but let's still stick with the president's visit and his call for FDIs in food security, energy, and education. This is at a time when France has sort of fallen out with some francophone countries within Africa who were once part of ECOWAS and have exited the ECOWAS. Countries like Niger, Mali, and of course Burkina Faso, who are now at loggerheads with ECOWAS, and even Nigeria, and also have fallen out with France itself. The dynamics are a little bit too tricky. Can you let us know how much of an impact will this have on us as a nation? And also, is there going to be some sort of reconciliation between these countries that have exited the ECOWAS and countries within the ECOWAS anytime soon, considering this state visit to France? What are we expecting?
Let me take the 3 dimensions you have raised. There are 3 dimensions to this problem, to this relationship, and they are economic, they are political, and they are also diplomatic.
Yes.
Now, when I say political and diplomatic, you must note this. On the economic sphere, France has had an iron grip of a parasitic nature and a repressive type with its former colonies in Africa. You've named them Mali, Chad, Niger. Of course, you have other Senegal and others.
And Burkina Faso as well.
These West African francophone countries, especially if you want to know the typical nature of their relationships, you use Cameroon and Chad, which are just broken off. The relationships at that level have not been in any way admirable and encouraging. But the difference, which is what I'm dealing with now, the political, the economic grip it has on the francophone countries will have discouraged Nigeria and made some of us say that there should be no relationship because it has been very treacherous at that level. Yes. But that was because those were the foundations upon which independence was given to those francophone countries. But on this case, Nigeria will be dealing as a neutral, as an independent state, not being a former colony of France and having therefore no relationships of that nature, which were one-sided, which were skewed against the francophone African countries. Now, on the other hand, Nigeria now can relate to them, but will have a political crisis, being that Nigeria leads Africa, not just this West African sub-region.
Yes.
They will require the respect of its neighbors in dealing with issues of security, especially banditry, terrorism, and even insurgency. Because the neighboring countries of Chad, Niger, Mali, Benin Republic, Cameroon Nigeria will need their cooperation in order to deal with those level of insurgents that come in from those countries. So to that extent, Nigeria will require to have a good relationship with those countries that are now severing their own relationship with France. But with France, investment in Nigeria now will be on a mutual respectability. That is to say, they will not be going into a relationship with Nigeria as if they were dealing with one of those one of its own colonies. Yeah. Nigeria will therefore be at ease to give the terms and conditions upon which they are going to relate. So to that extent, this move is very important. It is important diplomatically to France because having lost its own francophone countries, original countries that were its colonies, they will require to have bigger partners like Nigeria to have a foothold on the African continent. After all, if you remember, France had needed Nigerian troops to deal with internal crisis and security crisis in the West African sub-region and on the African continent generally. So being a member of the European Union, France will need a big partner like Nigeria for purposes of security, for purposes of economic stability, and for international relations on the African continent, which plays a major role in world affairs because of its rich mineral deposits and natural resources, and other natural resources. So it will need Nigeria to control that and to partake in it and have a strong foothold. So diplomatically, it will help them counter the absence of the francophone countries that have left them and are now no longer playing any political and diplomatic role with them. On the other hand, economically, they will be expanding their economic base by relating with Nigeria, which controls the African continent and plays a major role in the West African sub-region. And
Now,
of course, at the political front, Nigeria will stand to benefit because more investments coming from France in terms of energy and other such things, and even refining, if you remember, monopoly and such other French oil companies within the Bakassi Peninsula. If you remember, it is also France that has given us so much trouble relating with them in dealing with the Bakassi crisis. So coming to now play a role to get a better understanding gives us less areas of friction and tension. So it will be more on the basis of mutual understanding and cooperation between France and Nigeria. So it is to that extent that this visit of the president and this invitation by Macron to Tinubu at this time is very, very significant and symbolic for the Nigerian government and for France.
Honorable, you have rightly pointed out that it is quite significant and symbolic for us to have had this state visit, between Nigeria and France. And in as much as it is benefiting our country in very tremendous ways, good news for Nigerians, let's also talk about the relationship of Nigeria and these Francophone countries that have exited the ECOWAS on the backbone of calls being made for a reconciliation between ECOWAS and these countries and a reintegration of the countries back into ECOWAS. We're seeing Nigeria going to bed with France, a country that has obviously fallen out with the Francophone countries. Are we seeing an end to the rift, on-the-ground Cold War between Nigeria, or the ECOWAS in general, and these countries that have exited? And how much of an impact will this further have on the already severed relationship?
The sour relationship is understandable. I'm trying to break it down as much as possible because if I speak in diplomatic terms, your listeners are going to get lost. So I'm breaking it down so that even our brothers who are doing trade. If you remember, immediately the crisis started in Chad and Niger. The first people to respond were those in the border towns of northern Nigeria, of Katsina, Sokoto, Borno, and those states that had boundaries with the Niger Republic and other such countries. The reason is because the umbilical cord that fits the countries is such that if you sever it, Nigerians living along that corridor will suffer just like the other countries will also suffer. When the oil subsidy was removed, the first impact on those countries, not even on Nigerians. Thirdly, you should also understand that what the Francophone countries are saying is, why are you friends with our enemy? The friend of my enemy is my enemy. That is the mantra upon which they now severed or are having strained relationships with Nigeria. That will be easier to settle because, like I said, they enjoy the same umbilical cord. So they feed from each other. Look at the gas pipeline. It comes from Nigeria and passes through Niger going to Morocco. So you cannot stop such heavy impact project on account of political exigency of relating with it. So you define within your own context the kind of relationship you want to enjoy with the next country, not minding. And that's why Nigeria, even at the international scene, insists on being non-aligned, either to Europe, to America, or to Russia, then USSR. And that is why the concept of medium powers, that is, the superpowers, and Nigeria aligned with other such countries like Brazil to say we are medium powers. We won't align with Europe, the European Union, or with the USSR, the Asia giants. So to that extent, Nigeria will now, while relating with France, not allow their relationship with their immediate brothers of West Africa to be soured or severed. That is where we are. So I'm very sure, and very soon, Nigeria will repair its relationship with its Francophone neighbors and turn around to build back the West African force that had existed and see us form ECOMOG to deal with insurgency and coups in the West African sub-region countries of Sierra Leone, Liberia, and later on Sudan and Somalia. So Nigeria will definitely find it easier to relate and repair its damaged relationship with Niger, Mali, and other such places. Because having severed their relationship with France, Nigeria will no longer be their problem because their relationship with France, the French relationship with Nigeria will not interfere with their relationship with Nigeria. like you have the BRICS countries. The BRICS countries are sitting there, the European countries are sitting there, the NATO countries are sitting there. They are all forming their alliances, and all of them to protect their own international self-interest. And if Nigeria has said to you that Africa is the centerpiece of Nigerian foreign policy, then it should tell you that whatever happens in any African country is of interest to Nigeria. So they won't allow the relationship to sour for too long. And I'm sure that the repair work is already on the ground. And under this president in particular, he knows the import of that to our economy and to our people living within the border communities. What this tax reform seems to do is that once you pay this matter from Bumaji and you are heading to that place, as you are passing through, all you need is to show that first receipt you were given by Boki local government. Because once that 500 naira hits the account, it is now distributed to the entire federation according to the subheads that have been lined out. So the 500 naira you pay in Boki local government in Cross River should take you to Kano or to Plateau without you paying again on the road. This is what this tax reform seems to do. And that 500 naira you paid in Boki, just like the Raman is paying for the cows he's bringing from Sokoto to Port Harcourt. As he pays his 500 naira from Sokoto, he doesn't need to pay anything again until he lands Port Harcourt. That the 500 naira from Boki and the one in Sokoto put together can be distributed to the 36 states. This is what this tax reform seeks to do. And that the man who is selling banana in Bumaji or the Gary in Uyo in Akwa Ibom State should not be allowed to pay any tax at all, because his business of Gary is barely to sustain him. That you are running a restaurant in Aba where you have only 3 or 4 workers, you shouldn't be made to pay any ticket to anybody because you can barely sustain yourself. Those are small-scale businesses. They shouldn't be made to pay taxes. They should be exempted. But now, once you enter the market, I come from Cross River. People trek from Tsar to enter Obudu on Obudu market day with a basin of groundnut to sell, and they are asked to pay for tickets. How much is the entire groundnut when it is sold? It's not up to 1,000 naira. And you're asking them to pay. What this tax reform seeks to do is that such people should not be made to pay for anything at all. But Ben Ayade, the former governor of Cross River, tried to do that in Cross River State. But the duplicity and dubiosity of those agents will not allow them to implement it. That those kind of people, the Okada people, should not be made to pay any tax because they can't earn anything that is meaningful that brings them to any level. This is what this tax reform seeks to do. We need to have this information passed to the people to let them know. But because people must talk in order to win election, somebody sits in the Senate or sits in the National Assembly and say it is targeted at his people. Now, what is wrong with saying that the man who carries a goat to go to Baga market should not be charged anything by anybody to collect any receipt from him?
Now, Honorable Obun, I must commend you because this is the most simplified version of highlighting tax harmonization and exclusion for vulnerable groups I have heard since this conversation began. But can we see the NOA replicate this message as you've simplified it using real-life examples in communities while transporting agricultural produce from one part of the country to another is another big question.
This is a point we are making. I have said this in all platforms, that our gross inadequacy is management of information in this government. From the party level to the government level, we have not been able to engage the people. We have enough platforms to do so. But we use those platforms to talk about appointments, to talk about get the appointment and don't know what to do with them. And then you have people sitting in the name of media, and we are running into all these crises every day. What does it take? You have Radio Nigeria on every radio station everywhere. You have your platform, the TV station. You have Start Times on NTA. What is the Minister of Information doing that NTA cannot reach every village in Nigeria, and that starters cannot come on and put stations like your own in every village? What does it take to do that? But we are busy doing Bet Nigeria and other sort of things. We should be able to deploy the entire media apparatus of government and of individuals and beg stations like yours to take slots on this explanation, break it down, both in Pidgin English and the major languages, and put it on stations regularly every 10 hours at a time like this. You do it for the next 6 months, people will get familiar with it. Because even when government does it, and this is done, because the information is not there, they will still go and collect the money from those people. I just gave you the example of former Governor Ayade of Cross River State. He was weeping on TV when he said, why should people living in thatch houses who carry pepper to go and sell be asked to give receipts for just going to sell pepper in the market? He asked the question, how can an Okada boy who just does Okada to ride and pay be asked to pay? Where is he to pay tickets, to pay for receipts, pay taxes? That those people should be exempted. So these are the kind of things we are talking about. So I think that the information department of our government, of the Tinubu government, should come out with these simplified versions using pidgin and the major languages. If you go to, for example, the Akwa Ibom, write it in Oron, speak it on Akwa Ibom radio in Oron, speak it in Ibibio language, speak it in Anang language, and then put it on. Get to the Western Nigeria, do that. Get to Northern Nigeria, you have Fulde, you have Hausa, you have Fulani, you have Kanuri, you have Angas, you have Egon in Nasa. Use those languages and bring down this thing so that the person going will be listening to you and discourage you. So even the driver will say, please sir, this is what they are telling us on radio that you shouldn't collect receipt from us. As you are talking, the person is quoting you. He can even record it and put and say, this is what government is saying, why are you moving us? Because the people are not aware.
Honorable,
and then they now go and fall victim, and then people should give the information on the floor of the house, misinforming the public without even studying the bill. If you can't study, get an expert to do so, because there's a software for payment of consultants.
Very pertinent takes you have made there, but let's still take a look at it more holistically. You are quite right in the observations that you have made about simplifying it and about the NOA coming into the picture to ensure that they make the tax reform bills as simple as it can be to the common man for them to understand. Now here it says that the tax reform bill is targeting a zero VAT on exports and essential commodities. This is also coming at a time when the federal government is encouraging exportation of local produce that we have here in the country, while also discouraging importation so we don't become an import dependent nation. That is on one hand. I will get you to react to that, but also in reducing the burden on small businesses, the bill is set to reduce company income tax from 30% to 25%. If we are seeing all of these wonderful takes within the bill that would benefit majority of Nigerians, why do you think some lawmakers like Senator Ali Ndume continue to kick against the tax reform bill, citing some sort of suspicious or ulterior motives in the background?
I have told you this. I thought I alluded to this. Maybe I should dwell on it now. When the Ndumes of this world get involved in excessive politicking, this is excessive politicking. When you say you are suspicious, to bring out your areas of suspicion and put on the table for debate. It is in the rules of the Senate and like every other parliament that you shall not impute wrong motives to a motion or to a bill without substantiating it. It's in the rules. You are suspecting what? Name what item, what aspect of the bill you are suspecting. Is it enough to just make an outlandish comment, a generalized comment, and say I'm suspecting, and that is all? The entire bill to be brought down because of your suspicion without this following through to show which section you are suspecting or you think is injurious to a section of the community or the society. You must point this out. That's the whole essence of the debate. It is for you to point out clause by clause what you feel is wrong with the bill. Let Ndume say so about this bill. It is not enough to just stand out just so that you can be noticed. This attention seeking is unnecessary. This is a very tested legislator. I think he is beginning to reach the apex of his career, getting into a journal. The climax of his legislative activism is beginning to decline. And I think this is one aspect of it that should be called to order. And his colleagues must call him to order. let him bring out so that all of us can see with him what he is saying, what he's saying. So it is not enough for him to just jump up and keep saying that. Secondly, look at the issue when we talk about the import and the export. Is it not to encourage export? That we won't charge you for exporting anything. You won't pay anything to Nigeria. Just take it off. How else do you encourage export? How else do you encourage export? Cassava chippings can be, cuttings can be even exported. You can do our banana, we can do our plantain, we can do our rice. We can also export rice. Today, are we not talking about exporting refined oil? Are we not talking about that? Something we thought was impossible. We started by exporting refined oil. Suddenly, we could no longer export refined oil. Now we are back to it. So also with other things. What are we keeping yam flour here for? Yam gets bad, our oranges get bad, and all that. Are we not doing anything to invent it? So I think clearly that we need to have a rethink about the way we carry our legislative duties by just shouting unnecessarily what we know does not exist. So I think Ali Ndume and his type in the lower houses, if they don't understand a particular bill, they are permitted and given money. There is funding for research to what they call consultants. They can use their consultants and get the facts rather than come to public and do a public show of every bill that they have.
All right, sir. All right, so moving on, we have a little less than 5 minutes and we'll talk about one more item in the news before we call it a wrap on our review of the newspaper. It's in line with the December 1 deadline as given to states yet to implement the 70,000 naira minimum wage. We hear the Nigerian Labour Congress is mobilizing for a showdown, and particularly workers in Cross River have also begun strike. The magistrates also joined them as well, and one of the headlines said that justice is on strike in Cross River. Does it somewhat bother you that Cross River State is amongst 3 states that are yet to implement the 70,000 naira minimum wage, and in line with the industrial action as occasioned by organized labor? What are your thoughts in that direction?
Well, let me say that the case in Cross River State is distinct. The Cross River State government has set up a committee headed by the head of service to discuss with labor about the minimum wage, whether they will stick to 70 or they can do more than 70 or below 70. That committee has not sat one day. What are they discussing? What will be the allowance of the committee? That is what is keeping the Cross River Committee on and giving Cross River State Governor Prince Otu, who is known. Why do Cross Riverians call him Sweet Prince? It's because of his generous disposition. He was in the House of Reps for 3 times, was in the Senate, and then now he's governor. So he has a pedigree, he has a past that people can refer to. If he was in that nature, if you know his election, out of 18 local governments in the House, in the presidential election and others, we lost almost 5 or 7, 8 local governments. We lost about 7 local governments. But when we came to his election, we won 17 out of 18 to show you what he had. So only for us to come here now and this committee to meet and discuss the 70,000, that committee has not met with NLC. That is the annoyance of NLC. So they are justified. What NLC is doing and TVC is doing in Cross River is correct. It will force that committee to come, and the governor ought not to come and sit in that committee. So for me, it is a wake-up call for the governor to sanction those people who are given a responsibility and choose to play around it and then give Cross River a bad name and then get the governor being called out and the Cross River State government being called out. We have one of the best union and labor-friendly governments in the country. So to give us that type of name is clearly out an aberration. It doesn't in any way represent the Cross River State government. In any case, like I said, because of what is happening now, we have the burial of Dr. Joseph Wires going on beginning from last week. So because of that, there was no attention paid to the workers' strike, the workers' decision. This came to notice when the warning notice was given. But already we had this in our hand. And like you know, we are hosting the entire country and the entire world because Dr. Joseph Wires was an international citizen. So he died in UK. The UK government is interested. The Nigerian government is there. And then the state and other state governments, South, and the entire Nigeria, his colleagues across the world, are in Calabar as we speak, beginning from yesterday. So we started this process in Abuja since last week. So it has become a problem for us, and I'm very sure that as soon as it happens by Monday, we are not going to hear what is happening now. All the strikes and everything will just go down because the governor will now pay attention, disband that committee, and bring up a responsible team that will take immediate action and ensure that that happens. So Cross River definitely is not going to fall into that phase of it. By Monday, I can tell you, and the workers should also know because they are also involved. It is their uncle that is dead. It is their citizen that their father that is dead. And we cannot all sit back to be discussing salary on the grave of Wayas. We can't dance over his grave. And that is why I think that the highest respect and attention must be paid, and everybody must have to back down. Because if they say they should go down, who will receive the visitors? Cross River State is known as the hospital capital of the world. And in Nigeria, when you want to talk hospitality, it is to Calabar that you refer to. It is a historic city, and I don't think that the workers will not pay attention and give the whole of next week to the discussions. And before this time next week, I'm sure that a solution would have been gotten, and Nigerians will hear from Cross River State the level of minimum wage that will be paid by the governor of Cross River State, Prince Bassio too.
Well, Honorable Cletus Obun, we must thank you so much. It's always an engaging session with you here on the program. Thank you.